Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, or good night. I'm here. I I'm gonna figure out an intro one of these days. And it might be the last day, and I'll be like, oh, I wish I did that the whole time. Anyway, um, yesterday was Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025, day two of week three here at LAMDA. And Tuesdays and Thursdays are rehearsal days for our project. So I am working on my romantic scene from Shakespeare, which is A Midsummer Night's Dream. And and so we were in the David P.J. Ross studio on the first floor if you're British, second floor if you're American, because they call the first floor, what we call the first floor in America, the ground floor. And then the second floor is the first and second, so on. Interesting, right? I think they do the same thing in Spanish. Mainly. Um, so yeah, we just had two like 3 hour blocks of classes. That was like 2:45 um for our rehearsals. And so first we walked around, dressed, got warmed up, got present in our bodies, and then we started saying words and phrases that connected to our characters. They might have been actual lines, they might have been paraphrased lines or themes, right? Some things I thought was bewitched, um, betrayed, love, devoted, things like that. And then we said them as we walked. And then we played with the different volumes if we were just whispering them, devoted, or saying them to the whole room, which I won't do because it is currently 6:07 in the morning. And I already dropped my phone in the bathroom. So I feel bad that I might have woken people up. Anyway, so then we connected with our scene partners, and this might have been like eye contact connection or like from across the room saying our lines towards them, and they may or may not have noticed us. And just kind of playing with those relationships and how we feel towards these other characters as our characters. Um, then we added some more physical responses and input, kind of physically engaging, not touch, but adding the physical component. And then we began actually kind of acting out moments. And this wasn't with words, and it wasn't to act out a whole scene. It was just to capture those moments and play with the relationship and like the single moments. Because Demetrius and in my scene is very different because it starts out. So for those of you who don't know, Midsummer Night's Dream, all the wrong people. Well, Hermia and Demetrius are kind of engaged because of Hermia's father. Hermia's father wants Demetrius and Hermia to get married. And Demetrius is all for that. That's me. I'm in love with Hermia. But Hermia is in love with Lysander. And so Hermia and Lysander want to get married, but her dad's like, no way, dude. It's either Demetrius or death. And then the king, I can't remember his name, is like, actually, let's say it's banishment or or Demetrius. And so Lysander and Hermia decide to run off together in the woods. Then there's Helena. Helena is in love with Demetrius. They had a little fling before, but for whatever reason, Demetrius is no longer interested, and he's only interested in Hermia. So Helena, to gain favor from Demetrius, tells Demetrius that Hermia and Lysander have escaped into the woods, and so Demetrius follows them into the woods, and Helena follows um, Demetrius. And so all four of them are going out into the woods. And then Oberon, who is a fairy king, sees Demetrius and Helena like fighting, and he's like, that's not right. Let's fix that. And he tells Puck to, who's another little sprite fairy creature. And he's like, Puck, take this love petal from a love flower and put a love potion on Demetrius so that he falls in love with Helena, so that all will be right, because Helena was just didn't deserve the crap she was getting. And so Puck messes up and he gives the love potion to Lysander instead of Demetrius. And so Lysander, the point of it is the first person you see when you wake up is the person that you fall in love with. And so Lysander wakes up and sees Helena. So then Lysander, instead of being in love with Hermia, which is his true love, falls in love with Helena. And then now uh, Demetrius loves Hermia. Hermia loves Lysander. Lysander loves Helena. Helena loves Demetrius. But then Oberon sees that Puck messed up. He's like, stupid sprite, pow. And he's like, I'll do it. And then he bewitches um, Demetrius so that he falls in love with Helena. Then both guys love Helena. And Helena doesn't believe it because she thinks that everyone's making fun of her. So then she's fighting with Hermia. And Helena and Hermia are best friends, or were, before this whole shenanigans. And then, like, it ends up that everyone winds up loving the right person. But so the scene we're doing is starts with Lysander bewitched, chasing after Helena. Hermia is attacking verbally Demetrius, saying that Demetrius must have killed Lysander in pursuit of her. And Demetrius is like, no, but I'm so in love with you. And then she leaves after she gets all upset. And then Demetrius takes a little nap and Oberon bewitches him. And then Lysander and Demetrius both fawn after Helena. And then Helena doesn't believe it and thinks people are making fun of her. And then Hermia's like, what is going on? And then Helena and Hermia fight. And then Lysander and Demetrius leave to presumably go duel for Helena's love. That's the scene. So we were playing with that. Then, oh, we also played with stillness in the moment. Not that we had to move so much, and paraphrasing the lines together so that we could kind of get the essence of it. And it helps a lot to access the text and seen in a new kind of potentially easier way. So since we're in a group of four, a lot of people are in a group of two, but one is in a group of three. The guy playing Lysander and I did our scene together and paraphrasing it, and it was a little smoother. It went well. It was, I don't know. I'm really slow at memorization. I got my flashcards over there. Yeah, I do. And so it was nice to get those words and the worry out of my head. Then we also played with different like levels physically. And it was interesting how Hermia came down a lot because she was kind of shrunken by the experience. And then we got in a circle and wrote about our thoughts and discussed together what we had learned and experienced during the exercise. This exercise kind of helps us get out of our heads and focus on the understanding. And then we kind of focused on we needed to establish the where. Then we can have a playground to like work and play in. Um, we also talked a little bit about establishing the stakes, obstacles, and objectives. Gemma doesn't like the word stakes because she doesn't think it's very clear. She thinks usually when people say raise the stakes, they mean raise the emotion, and you don't want to play an emotion. Because emotions are results of actions and results and responses to something. So to just play the response is like, it comes off artificial. So the word that Gemma likes is clarity instead of stakes. Instead of saying, "Oh, I didn't feel the stakes," she says, "Let's work on the clarity of that. I don't see clearly that you really love Hermia, or I don't see clearly this or that." And it just helps kind of not have this artificial idea of stakes, but a legitimate, simple idea like clarity. And so something she was saying is that like there will be directors who use stakes. It's a very popular term. And what our job is to understand everyone else's language by translating it into our own. So find the words that work for us and then translate it and understand other people's language and ideas so that we can work with all people and their vocabularies. Then we talked about everyone's scenes uh, and their experience with beginning to analyze the language. What did they learn while we were doing our homework? And we did all of the parsing, and parsing Shakespeare is writing down the translation of it into modern English, the comprehension and understanding what all the words are. And then also we did a bit of scansion too. So anything we noticed in the punctuation, and scansion is breaking down the meter and breaking down the actual like text, the technical aspects of the text. Then we had a little 15-minute break. Then when we got back, Gemma talked about directing by first seeing what people bring, what the actors bring to it before she kind of makes her own decisions. And she doesn't come in with like clear blocking. She asked us to put on the scene ourselves first and just kind of read through it. We didn't worry about memorization or anything. We just held our scripts and we kind of walked through it. And so the activity was to do, yeah, run of the scene with our scripts and just follow our impulses. So we started with Antony and Cleopatra, and then we did our scene for 12th Night. Oh, not sorry, we're not 12th Night. We're Midsummer. 12th Night, and then The Winter's Tale, and then Much Ado About Nothing, and then our scene, second to last, with Midsummer, and then Romeo and Juliet. And it was nice to put it on its feet for the first time and actually not just read the lines with intention and stuff, but physically work with that space, because our scene is so there's so many moments of not downtime, of time in which two characters are talking and two other characters are focusing on like the action, and so they're not actively in the dialogue. And so what do we do with that? And luckily it moved at a quick pace, because when we were reading it, it was just like, and now there's like 3 pages that I'm not doing anything, and so it's a lot more engaged. So that was good. And then we ended with Romeo and Juliet's balcony scene. So some of the questions that came up is like, why are we making the choices that we make? Do we understand what we're saying? This afternoon we're going to break it into units and kind of really break down the meaning. That didn't end up happening today much, but that was an idea. And then we don't want to lean on the emotion. We want to lean on the why of the emotion. And then we we really wanted to take our time with the language. Sometimes we're just rushing through it to be like, oh, I know what I'm saying. I can say it well, instead of savoring the language. Also, I I loved watching these scenes because we haven't had a ton of opportunities to watch each other perform. We've done games and things, but like not like real performances. And I was so impressed and just like proud of my friends who are so cool and talented. And I think my favorite scene was the Much Ado About Nothing. Those two killed it, and they just really were locked in with the change in emotions and relationships and the stillness and silence and processing. I was really impressed. I thought that one was really good. I've seen performances, like full performances, that weren't as detailed as their like first dramatic read through. So good job. And others were great too. That was just the one that kind of stood out to me as my favorite. We'll see if it changes, but I think they're great. Knowing. Oh yeah. And so we also talked about make sure that you're really speaking to each other. Scripts always get in the way, but make sure that you're listening and speaking to one another, because that's big. What is that? And then blocking is added oh, blocking needs to be added, not just like let's move for movement's sake, but why? What are you doing? Why are you here? What do you want? Right? Blocking should be motivated by those questions. And then work on the clear focus for the audience and when you're not the point. And I was thinking about that in my scene specifically, like when do I need to aid the conversation between Hermia and Helena, and how do I not draw focus from that or self-indulge? And then I need to work on my lines daily. I really need to get on top of it. Some people are able to like look away from their scripts a lot, and I'm not there. So, um, yeah, my lines are going to be an obstacle until they know them, and then they'll be a tool. So then we'll have an we were going to have an exercise in the afternoon. So we bro braked. We broke for lunch. So then the activity that we did after lunch was we made an improv scene to help explore relationships and in our scenes. So Chandler and I, Chandler said I could use his name, but the guy playing Lysander said we are exploring, we'll be exploring our relationships, and then Hermie and Helena are exploring theirs. So um, I had it set in 2025, and and the idea that I came up with is that Lysander goes to ask for Hermia's hand from her father. So Lysander asking Hermia's father for her hand, but is interrupting Demetrius already talking and planning about the marriage with Hermia's dad. So so we went first, and it was fun, and we used um, another student to to play the dad, and it was good. Um, there's this whole idea about Demetrius as the only character at the end of the play who's still bewitched, and he ends up with Hermia. I mean Helena. Always switch those names. With Helena, the one he dated before, but starts out the play in love with Hermia. And so I wondered, like, that seems like he doesn't get a happy ending. That seems like he kind of gets like screwed over, right? But Oberon has a line in which he says that like he's giving the potion um to Demetrius because it's like to make his love true. And so I think um that something happened with Demetrius. Like it feels like they had this kind of like one night stand, or they like slept together. And so how does that affect his relationship? Because now he's not into Helena, but he's into Hermia. So maybe it was like a bad experience, or something happened with Hermia, but we felt that Lysander's love is true and it's deeper. So this, we were planning it all, and then Lysander jumps in and he's like, "Hey, I want to ask your hand." And the other guy who was doing it was killing it. Um, and it was just cool to kind of find that realization that Lysander's love is truer, at least for Hermia. And Demetrius, it might be more about status. It might be more about what he thinks is right. And but he really should love and does love, I think, Helena. What is going on? Where? A weird flippy hair. Anyway, totally unimportant. Ignore my ADHD. Yeah, it was great. And then we did the Romeo and Juliet scene, which was super fun because we did the party before when they first meet. And the guy playing Romeo brought this other guy and I and me to play like his bros like Benvolio and Mercutio. And so we were at the party and we were kind of crashing the party a little bit and we are just checking things out. And then Rosalind showed up and we're like, oh shoot, you used to have a thing with Rosalind. And so we're kind of avoiding her. And then he has a moment where he like locks eyes with Juliet for the first time. And he's like, oh, who's that? And then we were trying to help him figure out who it was. And then I was distracting the parents while the other guy, Benvolio, was distracting Rosalind and the other ones, and it was this whole super fun thing of just kind of living in the scene and establishing these relationships. And it was so great. Then we did Antony and Cleopatra, and we filled in as Cleopatra's handmaids and servants. This one guy was Cleopatra's videographer, which was just really funny. So he was just like documenting the whole thing and trying to find out um when to film and when not to film, and it turned out being the moment that Antony and Cleopatra met, and kind of how their love sparked, and us getting out of the way, and all these people who are constantly taking care of and administering to Cleopatra. That one was fun. Then we did Winter's Tale, and they did two scenes for Winter's Tale because they had three actors, and they did Leontes and Polixenes. There's some great Shakespearean names. Leontes and Polixenes as teenagers trying to steal wine from a church. And so I was with this other girl, and we were kind of a young couple who came to the church to pray and figure out what was going on because we are in financial ruin. Um, but then they get caught stealing the wine, and then their parents get involved, and they have to confess and and repent, which was fun. Then we did the other um, Hermia and Helena side of Midsummer. It was a girls' sleepover, and they're talking about like Helena hooking up with Demetrius, and Hermia saying that she's in love with Lysander, and it was a big deal. And that one was just those two, and it was just precious. It was really sweet, just like friends that are girls, it's so nice. And then they did Twelfth Night, and they did the moment that Viola tries to get in before she delivers her message, so like right before, because they've never met before, and so that was like the moment that they could do. And so her maids were there. We had Malvolio there, and Sir Toby, and they were just taking up that, like trying to block her way. And so Viola's really was desperately trying to get in, and so it built that earnestness and the determination, that tenacity the whole time while um, it was all working out. And it was interesting because there's not a lot of time, but they were able to stretch it out and realistically make it make sense. It was good. And then they did the other Winter's Tale, and they did it with all three, and it was like a dinner at Leontes and Hermione's house. Um, while during the 9 months that Polixenes was staying there, and so we were kind of like not maids, servants of a sort, servers at this dinner. So either we were at their house or not, and Leontes keeps getting called away, and he keeps um, and we were super attentive staff, and so we were like pulling out their chairs and bringing meals and doing a lot. And so they found that Leontes is always kind of focused on other things, and that's partially why Hermione feels so comfortable with Polixenes, and so that's where a lot of the jealousy stems. Then they did Much Ado, and um, they were doing like a 16-year-old Beatrice and Benedict, and Beatrice's cousin, which I can't remember her name, and I didn't write it down because I didn't remember it then. Nope, don't have it. Anyway, it was like her 12-year-old birthday party, and they're cousins and best friends. And so we were going there, and they're both trying to like dare, their friend groups are both trying to dare each other, Beatrice and Benedict, to dance with each other. And then it kind of blew up into a fight. And it was interesting because afterwards Gemma was saying how that's really representative of their current relationship within the scene, but they wanted to explore. She wanted them to explore a little more of the love and the positive side of the relationship, right? Like what was it like when they were 16, and all of that. And it was cool to see how they could have like nailed the scene but still had more depth and understanding to bring to it. Then we took a 15-minute break, and then we wrote down our schedule. So on Tuesday of the next week, we'll be working on Midsummer from 12 to 1. If it's a longer day, we'll come back for 4:45 to 6:30, or from or to 5:30, depending on if it's not a longer day. There's one day where she'll stay a little longer and leave a little earlier. And then this Thursday, so today's Wednesday, yesterday's the day I'm talking about. Tomorrow, we're gonna have a full company meeting for the first hour, 10 to 11, and then we're gonna work on Midsummer from 11 to 12. And then we'll have lunch, and then we'll have the full company from 1:45 to 2:15, and then we'll work with Jess from 2:15 to 4. So it's going to be a little messy, and that means Thursday of next week I need to be memorized. Ooh. Or Tuesday maybe, because maybe we're just not working on Thursday of next week, but I need to be memorized. So we're working by getting out of our head and into our body, and we're going to build a small staircase of actors blocks. So we brought in a bunch of actors blocks and we stacked them up. I want to show you the picture. This is how it was first. That's like the top view, and then that's the side view. Um, and then we worked in the round, and we just played with tableau and establishing power and where people were standing and sitting and moving. And then the audience would move seats to get a new perspective, and then the actors would move a block, and and it was cool. It started out with Romeo and Juliet, and a lot of kind of forcing us not to see Romeo or not or look at Juliet's back, and how to feel like we were from Romeo's perspective, or we were doing this or that. And that was cool. And then, yeah, and then we just kind of did that, exploring the shapes and the sizes the whole time. And it was fun. It was good. And today was all about these relationships. So we want to ask the questions like, what do we want to do to the other person, or what do we want from the other person? And that motivation, that objective, that want is what's really going to help clarify things. And then I was a little worried that we would get um we would do the scene in the round and it would suffer, because we were focusing on these strong, striking poses, which were great. They invoked a certain feeling. But as a theater, I'm like, I feel like I want to see Romeo and Juliet during the scene. So even though it's striking and it's interesting to look at, I don't want to lose something from that. Um, but I brought up the question, and Jim was like, "Yeah, that's partially your job as an actor, and you'll be fine." That was the day. And then I stayed and tried to do some homework, but was just sleepy. Um, and then I came home, and I talked to my parents, and then I talked to Emma, and I grabbed some food, and it was great. And look at this. This is my last page in this notebook. And then today I'll break into this one. Wow, wow, wow. Which is it, Titan? Anyway, that was yesterday, which was September 23rd, the second day of week 3 here at LAMDA. And it was delightful. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy it. Look at that.